Hi and welcome to HR Debatable. My name is Nelly Verlinden and I'm your host. Today I'm being joined by two fantastic guests, namely Elena Spiliotopoulou and Linnea Wevel. Hi Elena and hi Linnea.
Hi, nice
Hello,
to be here.
Lily.
Very nice to have you. Let's start with a little bit more about yourselves. Elena, perhaps you can introduce yourself in a few words.
Thank you, Nelly. I'm Elena, like you said. As my very long name suggests, I'm Greek. I've been living in the Netherlands for the past 10 years. I've been working in HR for the past 20 plus years, but I've had other roles for another 7 years in health and safety and quality and so on. Worked in various companies like BP and Staples and worked as freelance, and I'm very happy to be here.
Yes, I'm very happy to have you here with us as well, Elena. Thank you. Linnea, can you also say a little bit more about yourself before we start?
Of course. I'm Linnea. I'm a licensed psychologist, and for the past 4.5 years, I've been head of people at a Stockholm-based tech company called Alva Labs. Before that, I worked with leadership development and recruitment as a consultant, and excited to get this conversation started.
Definitely, me too. Thank you both. Now, before we get started, let me quickly explain to our listeners and viewers what we are going to do. In HR Debatable, as the name suggests, we debate about various HR and world of work related statements. I will read a statement, give a bit of context, and then both Elena and Linnea, you choose a position either in favor or against. Of course, you also get the opportunity to defend your position so that we have an actual debate. And I might play the devil's advocate every now and then to spark the debate further. Do we have any questions?
I'm ready.
All right, then let's go. The first theme today is around recruitment and hiring. The relevance or not of CVs has been a topic in the world of work for years. For some, CVs are an outdated tool and a thing of the past, while for others, they remain an important instrument in their quest for that ideal candidate. Research from software company Arctic Shores found that 43% of younger workers said that CVs are an outdated recruitment model, and 39% said they would prefer a personality assessment instead. As technological developments go faster than ever before, and as hard skills expire more rapidly than ever before, one can question the relevance of formal education and acquired skills, and by extension, question the relevance of the CV in today's world. At the same time, CVs have been a part of the recruitment process since the 1950s for a reason. Many recruiters still use them as a way to narrow down their search when they receive hundreds or even thousands of them. For lack of a better way to do so, or because that's what's most effective. And this brings me to our first statement of today. CVs are dead. It's time to move on to more modern alternatives. All right, Elena, what do you vote?
No.
Linnea, what do you vote?
Yes.
All right. Elena, I start with you for this one. You can elaborate a little bit on that.
So personality tests show different things than a CV does. The CV shows experiences. You can read how the person's style is, what is important for them, even the graphics, the columns, the words that are used. So it brings a wealth of information for the person, and it is a conversation starter. Additionally, how many times have we had CVs for a role that it is in finance and the person has zero experience whatsoever? So it's a quick way of sifting through a lot of CVs that are not relevant. Of course, CVs are not for everyone. So blue collars, for example, you wouldn't use the CV to do so. But I do believe that it's good to have them and it's good to pay attention to them.
All right, that's a great starter of the conversation. Linnea, I'm going to you now.
Sure. In the other ring corner here, the Stevie's dead ring corner, I would say for two reasons, I really agree with that statement. The first one is that the information that we do get from a CV, such as years of experience, education, but even as you said, Elena, like formatting and all those things, has actually, based on research, very, very little overlap with job performance. Meaning, even if someone like looks good on paper, it doesn't necessarily help us to know whether or not they will be a good candidate or not. Same thing with if they don't look good on paper, we don't know if we're missing out on that hidden gem. So the first reason in my mind is that it doesn't actually help us predict who's going to be a good fit for the role that we're hiring for. And the second reason is because it really opens up for that like subjectivity and bias. There's some really like dark statistics here where like women have to send in 30% more applications than men because they're unconsciously screened out due to CVs. People of color have to send in like 50% more CVs than white. Again, because people are screened out based on skin color. And then like people with like Arabic sounding names, they tend to, in the like Western countries, have a 60% like less likelihood of getting a call back to an interview based on their CVs, like despite like the level of experience. So something happens where we need to like sift through the CVs really, really fast. And it is, as you say, Elena, like an easy way to get like quick information, but that information doesn't necessarily help us know who we should move forward with. I do agree that like we need some of that information, but I would much rather use like screening questions initially or having the CV as something that I look at way later in the process to not be biased.
All right. We have a nice start of the conversation there. Now, Elena, first of all, do you want to respond?
Yes. Again,
Okay.
you will cut this part because this can go for a long time. So there are parts, I agree with you, Linnea, that can be removed or they can be closed in order to avoid the bias. So there, on the predictability part, however, I don't fully agree. Whether a person makes spelling mistakes or not, whether a person uses numbers or not, the attention to detail, although you may say the CV is written by them or by another person, the choices that they make on what they put on paper to represent them is also representative, and I would say it can have a predictive correlation to performance. So I think we are both on the same page that elements of it are needed, elements of it can be improved and can evolve. On when in the process to give the CV, that also can be debatable. I would say the sooner you give it, again with these caveats, the better it is to sift and not waste your time rather than put it later.
And if I can just like one comment on that, I think many recruiters have used the CVs just as you explained, Elena, with like there's a misspelling here or the format or how are they expressing themselves. All of that will likely go away due to ChatGPT. I mean, I think we see a lot of candidates really leveraging AI. We will get CVs that are way more similar without mistakes. So I believe that the CV was dead even before the era of AI. But now when we have these tools, I think that was kind of like the final nail in the coffin for the CV, because we won't be able to distinguish these attributes, which I also not sure necessarily actually helps us determine who's a good fit anyway.
For me, the key word is choice. How you choose to use ChatGPT, what you choose to put in there. So still, there is a wealth of information. I think we both would agree it doesn't replace the discussion, the critical thinking, and the argumentation process.
Yeah. No, I mean, to that point, I think we need to understand what someone has done. I think the most important aspect for me is that it's not used as like a screening tool to screen relevant people out and maybe less relevant people in. It does come down to like how you use it. But for the sake of the debate, I would argue kill it.
Okay, I do think that both of you here, you touched on an interesting point, something that also came to my mind, and that is indeed now we are having a thing called ChatGPT that both candidates, but also, of course, companies can use and will use increasingly, I think, for the recruitment and hiring process. So another question that I guess becomes relevant as well is how are we going to deal with that as HR? Because we will indeed, if we stick with the CV, probably get more similar CVs. And on the other hand, if we do not use the CV anymore, what are we then going to use? Yeah, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that. I'll start with you this time, Linnea.
Sure. In my mind, like, as you say, it's a given that ChatGPT will revolutionize both how the candidates view hiring and as how the recruiter will use or view hiring. I would anticipate that like the best alternative to the traditional CV will be a combination of psychometric assessments, so personality test, logic test, together with screening questions where you can really sort on only the relevant information and not care about gender, age, ethnicity, like remove that from the process. So combination of personality, logic assessments and a screening question, because that's also something that is less reliant on like text where you can automatically just answer. So in the beginning, I think that will be the best choice.
Elena, I see you smiling, so I cannot wait to hear this.
I am smiling because Linnea has said in her introduction that she's a psychologist. And it's also I didn't say I'm a chemical engineer with an MBA. And it's so interesting to see the technological approach from Linnea, where I think I'm coming from more on the human software, so the inverse a little bit of roles and backgrounds there. That's why I was smiling. For me, a CV, it's not about writing the gender it's how you write your experiences, how you write what you want to project there. So whether you use ChatGPT or not is irrelevant because it is your choice on what you phrase and how you phrase it. This, I believe, cannot be replaced by the screening questions or the psychometric questions and so on. There is a wealth of information there that you need to see. Even the choice of using ChatGPT versus not using, or the choice of wanting to be different or differentiate yourself versus other, also tells a story. So as such, that's why I'm saying I want the CV. It might be a CV, as I said, that you redact the gender, the name, the things like that. But I do want to see the personality and the choices the person makes on how they put it on paper on free text rather than responses.
I have another element here that I'm thinking of, and this is more practical as well, because we're talking about the CV. I do think that the CV, pretty much everybody in the world and every company knows what a CV is, and they know more or less what they are looking for in the CV. I think from a practical perspective, as much as we might want to move away from a CV or not, and when you start talking about assessment questions, to what extent are our companies ready for that, and to what extent also are HR professionals ready for that? Because yes, we are talking about this right now, of course, but I do think that often in these kinds of discussions, we tend to forget that the vast majority of companies and people in those companies, they are maybe not thinking about that yet. And that is not in any way meant in a bad way, but I think it's just the reality, because we tend to talk on the forefront of developments and technology, but whereas the reality tends to lag behind a little bit. So all this to say, yeah, I mean, even from a practical perspective, how do we see things in that regard? I'll start with you, Linnea.
I think you really bring a really important point here, because I think the research that, like the meta-analysis of, hundreds of years of studies have for a long time shown that the CV isn't necessarily like overlapping with job performance. And still nothing has happened. Like the gap between theory and practice has been and still is very, very wide, because I think the CV, it's simple, it's expected, and people are like used to it. So for me, I think it's about educating that there is another alternative. I think the demand from younger candidates will increase the need to change. But then I think it's about finding like trying things out, like daring to find one role where I'm going to do it differently and see how that worked out for us. I mean, Milena, you mentioned like the blue collar, maybe I can start there and do something different because the CV, well, I mean, people for some certain like entry roles won't have the same experience, then it's going to be a lot harder. So find the use cases where you can start to do something different and see how the organization responds, how the candidate responds. But as with any part of an organization, recruitment and HR can't stand still. We constantly need to develop. We need to try those new ways of working to make sure we know what works for us best.
Elena?
I agree, meaning that piloting things is always a good thing. I don't think it's something like on the forefront or something new. Assessments have been here for many years and things. It all comes down to a business case, pitching what is in it for our stakeholders and putting it. So as such, if we haven't found a way to say, look, let's try something different because this, and this, it's more around ourselves rather than our stakeholders or how long this has been going. So it's an interesting way of exploring where this is something that is worth piloting and doing something there.
I think that is a beautiful end to our first debate, if I may say so. Thank you so much.